Hello again, folks. Welcome back to the yurt on a rainy day. Nice gentle sound of rain in the background today. Okay, so it's part 19, and as I talked about last week with the short form, I'm going to go back to the beginning and I'm going to look at it, each section in greater detail, looking at various aspects, and then we'll just continue with long form later on, okay? So I'll get back into my position here for the start of the short form. Okay, so we're looking from the very beginning in the short form. Hands where they naturally fall, shoulders and chest relaxed. Okay, so the head is if you're balancing something on it. So the chin's very slightly pulled in, so there's just natural stretch on the neck, what we're looking for. And at the beginning we're just relaxing. Okay, the hands, as I say, where they naturally fall, shoulders and chest relaxed, head lightly upright. So at the beginning then we're just looking at the step out. In the step out we're bending both the knees, okay, initially. And as we do that, the emphasis of the weight shifts into the right hip. And the step is slowly out to the left, more of a stretch than a step, and then we bring our weight into the centre. Okay, so the weight's evenly in both legs, roughly feet round about shoulder width, parallel, okay? Now the way I've talked about this before, this is your first rooting exercise in the form, okay? So as I've emphasised before in class, it's not your normal step out to the side like this. So another way of thinking about it is that you're pressing the hip. When you bend your right knee, you bend your knees and you're shifting into the right leg, imagine there's something here like a post or whatever that you're actually leaning the hip against, and the hip will stay in that position as you step out to the left. Okay, as you can see, I haven't shifted any weight away from there. The root is firmly down into the right leg, stays there as a step out. So in theory, it doesn't matter how long it takes this leg to get out to find its place, because I'm balanced down through here, and then we're bringing the weight into the centre. Okay? So that's our opening step, very important. So I'm just going to do this as, for now, as a series of steps. We're going to look at the first section of the form after the opening, which is the part in white horse's mane, up to the white crane opens its wings. Okay, so let's just look at what we're doing with the root, and I'll do this from a couple of different positions. So initially, we're just going to move this way slightly to start actually. So initially, bending the knees, taking the weight into the right leg, and slowly stepping out to the left. And then once the foot's down, the weight moves into the centre. Now the next thing in root when we're doing form is you bend the knees just slightly more, it's just everything dropping, sinking down into the legs, making the legs a wee bit more springy. And then what we're going to do is we're going to step in, turning the hips, from the hips being square, turning into the diagonal, and heel to heel. And the way I've described this before is, rather than thinking of stepping, again, important that the root stays here. Again, imagine the hip is against something, and we open the left hip out to the side, putting the heel down, and then we come forward, and once we're forward, we push the rear foot, the rear heel back. This is our bow stance, left foot straight ahead, rear foot diagonal, and about 2/3 of the weight forward in the left leg. Okay, so for the second step, again from the hips being square, when we sit back, they turn diagonal, the foot turns diagonal, and we bring our weight with the hips diagonal still into this direction here, and into the left leg, and then we step heel to heel to the right. And again, this is a hip opening move. right hip out to the side, heel down, and then we bring our weight forward. And then same again, sit back, turning the hips, turning the foot, bringing the weight into the leg, and then slowly stepping heel to heel and out diagonally, and finally coming forward. That's our third bow stance, the part of Wild Horse's mane. And from here, half step, and then we sit back, and when we step in this time, the ball of the foot goes down lightly. This is your first empty stance in the form. And with the empty stance, it's important that you've got this alignment with the weights back, where you're not leaning forward into the leg like this. So tucking the coccyx in line with the heel, and that's the principle of empty stance. Where even though this foot is down to stabilise you, you're not relying on it for balance. Okay, so if we do that just coming towards you, you'll see the turning element better when we're going from bow stance to bow stance. So we'll start back here. So, first thing is the root into the right leg when we bend the knees. Stepping out to the left, and then bringing the weight into the centre. Okay, so knees bent. The next thing in rooting, when you're lowering the hands in the form, is sinking down, bending the knees a bit more, and then that's where we step back in, turning the hips diagonal, and keeping them diagonal, keeping the weight to the right. Extend the left heel out to the side, and then once the weight is forward, we push the right heel back. So your second bow stance, and you'll see the turning element here. So from the hips facing forward, sit back and turn so the hips are facing this way. They will remain to face this way as we shift the weight and step heel to heel. And then again, with the hips diagonal, we open out to the side. That opening movement gives us our width as well as length. That's our second bow stance. And then the third one, again sitting back, turning the hips, bringing the weight forward, keeping the hips square, diagonal, and then when you come forward into your last of the three, they're squared again. Again, 2/3 of the weight forward. And then half step, coming towards you, and then sit back, and this time step in towards the centre. So if I was to bring that foot back, it would just be on the, as you can see there, the outside of the heel or the inside of the heel here. That's the sort of alignment that we're looking for in our empty stance. And again, it's important that you're not relying on this leg for balance. Okay, so just while we're doing a refreshing course here with part two, what I want to emphasize is the alignment of the leg, especially in a load bearing stance like bow stance, where 2/3 of the weight's forward. So there's the bow stance that we're looking at. So most of the weight forward on the left, rear foot 45 degrees, hips square, 2/3 of the weight forward. Now just something to watch out for, and again when you're building the form up again like this and just taking it step by step, in a lot of the classes I do this as a walking exercise, basically the bow stance thing. You know, getting the hips diagonal, stepping heel to heel, opening the hip out, bringing the weight forward, etc. You can do that as much as you want. What you want to look out for when you're in a bow stance, this is very important, is the alignment here, the knee and the foot. Okay, and it's something that when you're learning, you gotta be mindful of, and you gotta check now and again, unconsciously. And I've seen it in classes, and I did it myself when I was learning. Unconsciously, we can do things like this. I mean, that's exaggerating, where the knee is out of line with the foot, or like this. So with a position like this, we're twisting the knee, and that means all that pressure is going down into the knee rather then into the foot. So when you're in a forward bow stance position, you know, so there's one, for example. There's the next one in the right leg. Okay, so when you're building the form up again like this, just have a wee look at stuff like this. It rarely happens when the knee goes out this way. I can really feel that. Some people it does, but mostly what happens is this type of thing, where the knee comes in away from the foot, and it's something you really got to keep an eye on. Okay, prolonged practice of that is not good for the knees. You know, so when we're, especially in a load bearing stance like bow stance, where 2/3 of the weight is in this case in the left leg. Okay, so that's an important element to watch out for in your form, and that's why I'm building it up again slowly like this. We'll continue to look at stuff like this every week. It's sort of what I call the safety elements of the form. So looking at that same sequence then with what's happening with the hands. So taking it from the beginning. Okay, so we're opening, root in the right, step out with the left. Bring the weight into the center, and from here the hands just the way they are at the sides like this, the way they are, just naturally fall in there, just with that shape, they just rise. Okay, nothing fancy happening here. And then when they lower again, just relax the shoulders, let the elbows bend, press back down, and that's where we're bending the knees a wee bit more. So when I step in, I'm holding the ball. So the ball, the right hand at the sternum, just at the centre of the chest, not touching, but the thumb pointing towards it. The left hand just below the navel, and then that's where the hip opens to the side. And when I come forward for the first part in Wild Horse's Mane, left palm up, right one down, and push the right heel back. Now you'll see this from another angle as well. Okay, so there's your first part in Wild Horse's Mane. You've completed your bow stance by pushing that right heel back. Right hand just down, just in front of the hip. Level with the hip, but slightly in front. The left one, basically just about the shoulder height. So you've got that wee bit of a bend in the elbow, so the shoulders and chest relaxed. For the second one, as we sit back, we're turning the hand. So the hips are diagonal, the hand is turned. And then as I step up and out, it's like holding the ball. So now the left hand, centre of the chest, right hand below the navel, and then when I come forward, the hands pass again. So this time, the right palm up, left one down. And then finally, for the third one, sit back, turn the hand and hip, step up, hold the ball, step out, and then forward, left palm up, right one down. And then, during the half step, as we step with the right foot, we hold the ball again, left hand, centre of the chest, right hand below the navel. And then as we sit back and step in, the left hand presses down, the right one goes up. And again, empty stance on the ball with the foot. Okay, so let's just look at that again from another angle, and then we'll leave it there. So the opening, feet are together, hands where they naturally fall. And then bending the knees, root into the right, and slowly, keeping the weight in the right leg, step out to the left, and then bring the weight into the centre, knees bent. From here, raise the hands, and as we lower, bend the knees a wee bit more. And then we're stepping in heel to heel, turning the hips diagonal, holding the ball, right hand up, left hand below the navel. Open the hip out to the side, and as we come forward, left palm up, right one down, and in this position only, we push the right heel back. So you'll see the hip turn here as we sit back, turn the hips diagonal, and as we step in and out, we're holding the ball. So by the time the heel's forward, this is your position, left palm up, right one down, and then we come forward as the hands pass. And then we do one more of the part and wild horse and grain. There's the hip turn. There's the hand moving to the centre as I step in and out. And then as I come forward, left palm up, right one down. And the final move, there's the half step. By the time I've done it, I'm holding the ball. And then as I sit back and step in, the hands are passing. Left palm up. Sorry, left palm down. Okay, so that's your last position. Part and wild, the weight crane opens its wings in an empty stance. The empty stance, the pressure just slightly on the ball of the foot. So this, for short form, this is revision. Okay, and it's really worth it, no matter how much or little of the short form you've done, of really just breaking it down like that. Start with doing the walking exercise. Really keep an eye on that alignment, the knee and the foot, and when you're in a low burn stance. Very, very important. So wee bits and pieces like that, even if you're way beyond this and you're practicing way beyond it, it doesn't do any harm to go back to the beginning and look at the basics again. Okay? So enjoy your practice, and part 20 next week. Hello again, folks. Welcome to the long form. And last week we had got up to, where did we get up to? The single whip after the Fair Lady work shuttles, the 4 corners. So we're going to look at a relatively big chunk today, but new technique in it, but lots of repeat. Okay, or some repeat anyhow, stuff you're already familiar with. So I'll go back to the position, and I'll go into the position we're going to start in, and we'll look at where we left off last week. Okay, so let me think. So I'm coming across, going into this direction, so I'll come back here. So where we finished last week was the single whip. Okay, we're back in single whip again. So what you're going to do here is something very familiar that you've done in part 2, and go into the cloud hand sequence. Okay, now the difference with this cloud hand sequence, in part 2 you did 4 steps. Okay, in part 3, and this particular section, you'll do 3, but there's a difference. What happens with the 3 is the first one is normal width. Okay, in the second one, you just sink a wee bit lower into your right leg and get the hip open a bit further, and then bring your weight across. And then the third one, you'll go lower still, get the hip out as far as it will go, and then we're going to step up. This hand comes up the centre. We're going to step out the way we do at the end of the cloud hands in part 2, and then it's a slightly longer step forward where you get into a longer single whip. Okay, so basically, when you do cloud hands in part 2, the steps are all consistent. So you look at it from like the single whip, you're sort of stepping consistently, keeping the weight in the right, stepping out to the left. You know, you do 4 of those steps. So in part 3, we are working towards the longer stance that's going to be in the move after the next single whip, the longer single whip. Okay, so again, how you get into it is exactly the same as the way you would in part 2. Okay, so the first step is the same as you would in part 2. Second, lower into the right leg, opening the left hip as far as you can, so it's a wider step. And then the third, lower again, wider still. And then just like you would get out of it in part 2, Try to sink into that right leg a bit more, get a longer step. So that's your slightly longer single whip than you've done before. Now we're going to do a move now called snake creeps down. So in snake creeps down, what will happen is you'll actually let this heel push back a bit more, so push a wee bit more weight forward, but then you'll turn the foot out so it goes down into the diagonal, and your weight is going to follow. So as you go down, you'll pull this left foot round, and you'll just bring the left hand down towards the knee like this, and you're down into the right leg. And then to get out of it, this hand will come up, the left foot will turn out diagonal, and the right one will come round, and then you're going to step up into a one-legged position called golden cockerel. Golden cockerel stands on one leg. Then you're going to go down into the left leg. This hand's going to come down, and then you're going to do the same thing again to the other side. Golden cockerel stands on one leg. So let's just look at that. There is another familiar section coming up after this, and then it brings us into a big repeat, which we'll look at next week, the repeat section. So the elements of that, a few different things happening here, okay, than what you're used to. Just looking at, we'll look at the entire section in a minute, but we're looking at it just from this longer single whip here, okay? So, as you can see, just slightly longer than what you're used to. So to elongate it even more, to get down into the low position, the right heel pushes back, and then as you shift the weight, that one foot's turning out into this diagonal, and you're coming down just as low as is comfortable into that right leg. Okay, and then you're coming forward, this foot will turn out diagonal, this one will come round with you, pulling the hips round, and then you're going to step up into this one-legged stance. So the toes are pointing towards the floor. I'm just going to get away from this joint here. So here, and then the root will come down into the left leg, the right foot will go down just out diagonally, and then you'll step up into another one-legged position, again with the toes pointing down. Now the golden cockerel stands on one leg, the knee just towards the elbow here. Okay, whatever side you're on, whether it's your left leg or your right, the idea is that we're getting into this posture and not trying to get the thing touching. If it doesn't meet, it doesn't matter. The idea is to keep your posture right, to keep yourself upright. So then, as if that wasn't enough, so we come out of it, snake creeps down, and the golden cockerel stands on the left leg, and then the right. And then what's going to happen? Repulse monkey, of which there are 3. So the first time you did repulse monkey, there were 5 steps. This time there are 3. Okay? So let's just put that together, and then we'll look at it from a different angle. So we'll see. Okay. Trying to get away from these joints here. A wee bit uneven, or maybe it's just me. Who knows? So our normal single whip that we did after we'd get up to after the 4 corners, the Fair Lady Work shuttles. So just like part 2. First step, just your normal step. Second one, slightly longer. And the third one, longer again. And then just the way you would come out of it, just a wee step up, that's the way you come out of it in part 2. And then a longer step forward, so we're in a slightly longer single whip, right heel out, and then the right foot does that turn into the diagonal. As we come down, the left foot is pulling in diagonal, hand down towards the inside of the knee, this one remains hooked, and then as we come forward, reaching up with this hand, left foot diagonal, the right foot pulls around, and imagine you're sort of pulling yourself up into this one-legged position. Both across hands on one leg, and then press down, and then shift across into the right, and doing it on the other side. And then from here, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we're just going to look at this from another position. Okay, coming towards you and from the side. So it probably makes sense if I am in the single whip from this direction here. So nicely just facing away from it. Okay, so the way you would get into cloud hands in part 2. So the first step, just a normal one. The second one, just that wee bit lower, so you're getting a longer step again out to the left. And the third one, lower still, so you're getting that left foot right out as far as you can. And then the way you would come out of it in part 2, you'll end up in single whip again. Okay, so I'm going to do this single whip facing you. So that's the 3 lengthening cloud hand steps, okay? So from here. So we're in a wee bit of a longer single whip than we're used to. So what's happening here, the first thing is I'm going to push that right heel back, and then the right foot is going to turn out diagonal out this way, and as I come back into the right leg, bending that right knee, sinking down into the right leg, the left hand's coming down the inside, and that left foot is pulling round. So when I come forward, that foot's turning out, and the hips are turning into this direction, and then I'm stepping up into this one-legged stance. So I root down here into the left as the right foot goes out, this hand will come down, and then as I come up, this hand will come up. And then finally, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now I know some of you have done this, done the snake creeps down in the short form, which is a wee bit different. And I know for some of you it'll be the first time looking at the snake creeps down position. So it's important to try and just do it to your own ability. Okay, so through time and through practice, you can get into the lower postures, but don't push them. Don't push them. You know, the idea is when you're in this already longish single whip, you're elongating it a bit, just to give yourself, just to get the hips open a bit more, to allow you to then just sink down. You get the room here to just go into this sort of lower posture. Doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter how low you go. If you're only comfortable coming forward a bit, getting the hips into this direction, that's fair enough. You know, if you can go down lower, sort of sitting down with the coccyx towards the heel there, fair enough, but don't push it. And again, when you're coming forward, make life a lot easier. Get the foot out into position to stabilize you so it's diagonal, and then when you come up, just locking that left knee, and then down into the left, bringing the weight across, and then locking the right knee. And then from there, just the way you would in snake creeps, repulse monkey, veering forward when the foot goes back each time. Oops, excuse me. So, look, have a wee go at that. I say that every week, don't I? But I know for some of you who haven't really even covered part 2 yet, it's way beyond where you are, but it doesn't do any harm to have a look at it. And again, if you're in part 3 and you've covered this in part 3, just treat it like a revision, you know, and really look. The important thing is the root in the move. Okay, so for example, when we're doing those longer steps, don't sacrifice principle for trying to get too long, if you know what I mean. So there's nothing to be gained, for example, from doing this type of thing here. You know, we're getting the foot out as far as it will go each time, you know, and making sure that you're firmly rooted, not sort of coming part way and stepping up, making sure that you're firmly rooted before we step back up. So again, when you're revising part 3, this is really useful to look at things like this in terms of your root. Again, I'm still rooted here into the right leg, even though I've stepped a wee bit wider. You know, I can step back in there. I haven't committed anything totally. But again, making sure that I'm rooted there before I step up. And there's the principle there again. You know, where everything's down through here. And then especially in the final one, you know, don't try and go too low. Just as low as is comfortable, getting the hip out as far as you can. Again, I'm firmly rooted down through here. And then we are there, coming up into the long and single whip. And with the long single whip, bending this knee a wee bit more, getting the heel out as far as it will go. But again, move it still back and then fall. And then that's where you're going to do your main posture. So, enjoy, and we'll have fun next week with a huge repeat section that's coming up. Okay? So, all the best, folks.